Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes a question itself is so provocative it makes you think about whether or not it should be asked. Is Donald Trump a racist? It's a ridiculously provocative question, to be sure, but New York Times columnist Nick Kristof took it on, raises the question in a new op-ed, and we have him with us right now from New York. Nick, thanks for doing this. Tell us why you took on this question. You know the heat even the suggestion brings among his supporters. What were you going for, and where'd you come out on it?
Well, I mean, first of all, I do think that racist is a loaded word. I think we should be really careful about simply tossing it around in a political season. So I wanted to go back and look at the evidence. And so I looked back over 45 years, and I mean, frankly, it's pretty devastating. I started in the 1970s when the Nixon White House, which was not a famous champion of civil rights exactly, sued the Trump organization, of which Donald was then the president, for systematically denying blacks access to the apartments that the Trump organization owned. You wade through more than 1,000 pages from this lawsuit, and it repeatedly shows that a white tester would go to a Trump apartment and be shown several apartments immediately available. A black person, as a tester, would go and be told that nothing was available. Trump employees said that applications for apartments by black people were coded, C for colored, so that the central office would know to deny them.
Nicholas, so that was in the 70s. And so you went back and looked at these reams and reams of documentation and showed that there was discrimination being practiced at the Trump real estate organization then. That was the 70s. Then what did you find in the 80s and the 90s?
So, I mean, essentially this pattern continues. Trump moves into the casino business. A former Trump casino worker who was black says that when Donald Trump visited the casino in Atlantic City, the blacks would all be taken off the floor and herded into a back room. The former president of the Trump casino in Atlantic City wrote a 1991 book in which he talked about Donald Trump trying to get him to fire a black accountant, saying he doesn't want blacks to count his money, saying that blacks are lazy, quoting...
Yeah, I mean, Nick, the account has been out there. He's referring to a story where supposedly Trump had said, I only want certain types of people counting my money, not a black guy. But, you know, as you know, Nick, what's the counter? The counter is very hard to pin down. That guy never came forward. And when you get to people close around Trump and who've known him, they say he isn't a racist, and that you're talking about things that an organization did. Many organizations do them. Doesn't make them right, but doesn't make him a racist. Your take.
You know, in any one incident, I think there is ambiguity. But where you have a pattern for 45 years in the real estate business, in the real estate company that Trump headed, then in the casinos, then more recently, you know, we have Trump this year twice retweeting a tweet from white genocide with a photo of the founder of the American Nazi Party. I think it's fair to provide some leeway, but over 45 years, you simply see this consistent pattern, and I don't know what else to call what emerges except racism.
I don't know, Nicholas, it's so hard. I mean, I hear you. You did the investigation. You looked back at all of the documentation, but it's just hard to know what's in somebody's heart and in somebody's head and to sort of be able to conclude that. But tell us, I mean, tell us more about your case. So you looked at how he acted in the casinos, and then more recently, what did you find as well?
So, I mean, let me just address that. I mean, there are two elements of racism. One is kind of what is in people's hearts, whether they believe that their race is superior to others. And that is, I think, very difficult to know. But the other element of racism is a systematic tendency to discriminate against people of other races. And I think that is precisely what emerges in the Trump real estate empire, in the casino empire, and more recently as a politician in these episodes. I mean, and in a sense that goes back to 1989 with the Central Park Five, where you had blacks and Latinos arrested for a particularly horrific crime and eventually exonerated. But at the time, Trump purchased full-page ads calling for the death penalty and helped whip up the crowds that, in effect, created something of a modern lynching.
But just to give him his best defense, right, that's what fairness demands. Many people felt that way. That was a case that mischaracterized the facts and led to a real prejudicial effect within the system, as you and I both know. And then you have what he just said in his speech the other night, where he said, these kids in these minority communities, they deserve every right to live out their dreams like anybody else. So does it give you a more balanced picture? Is it cloudy, or do you think it's clear?
Well, for example, it's true that there was a lot of alarm over the Central Park 5 case, but the mayor at the time, Ed Koch, was calling for peace, and Trump went out of his way to criticize Koch's call. When the Central Park 5 were exonerated, Trump criticized them and said that they had other sins. And again, I wouldn't make so much of one case, whether it's Central Park 5 case, whether it's retweeting these white genocide posts, whether it's the statements about the Latino judge, whether it's real estate. But when you, time after time, over 45 years, have somebody whose consistent actions and statements lead to this kind of discrimination, I don't know what else to make of that.
Everybody can read your piece for themselves. It was in the Sunday New York Times. Nicholas Kristof, thank you very much for being on New Day. Nice to talk to you. Newsroom with Carol Costello begins right after this very quick break. Chris and I'll see you tomorrow.
You want to run the Rocky steps?
Let's do it.
You won't do it.